thank you very much and welcome to the final Personnel Board of 2024. The first item, we hope, yes, the first item is apologies. Pauline is joining us online and I think that means that there are no apologies, everybody is present. Super. So item 32 is minutes of the previous meeting to confirm the minutes of the meeting held on the 30th September 2024. Stephen.
I'm proposing that we accept the minutes.
Fantastic.
As a model of that kind.
Do we have any questions, comments, or are we happy, or is somebody happy to second that? Seconded by Prue. No comments, no questions. Everybody in favour? Yeah. So that's
just one. Just one question.
Mm-hmm.
I think there was a proposal to change the board's name in here somewhere.
There was. My recollection is that needs to go through steps with council. With the council. Yes.
The only observation I would have is you want to call it an employment committee, but it also includes people that are not employed. So I just thought we might want to bear that in mind.
That's a very good point. And Prue's got her hand up.
It's come to the Constitution Review Working Group as part of the review of the Constitution. We're going to be having one more meeting, I think, before it comes, or at least one more, to put the whole thing together again. So if you want consideration of that, can you mention it to Peter Harper and he can make sure he can bring it up at the next meeting. But it's gone through so far in the draft changes as Employment Committee.
Okay. Thank you. I'll send it to you and Peter.
Yes, I'd be happy for us to call ourselves something like the Employment and Staffing Committee. I don't know what other people feel around the room.
I have no particular view on this other than we just make sure that we coordinate it with the Constitutional Review Working Group.
So I think Pauline would be very happy to take that forward as, for example, the Employment and Staffing Working Group, because you're absolutely correct. It does include other staff who are not employees of the council.
Thank you.
Well, taking into account the point that Pauline has raised, is everybody happy that we agree the minutes? Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, so that is now unanimous. Thank you very much. So the next point is declaration of interest. Does anybody want to declare an interest? No. Then the next point is public question time. Madeline, do we have any questions from the public? No, there are no questions from the public. And is it the same for member question time? No questions from members. Thank you very much. So the next item is item number 36, Agency and Temporary Worker Report for Q1 and Q2 of 2024 to 2025. We are on a journey with this report. We brought it from part 2 of the meeting through to part 1 to give it more visibility to members of the public and to be more transparent. And Louise and her team are very much, as we're going forward with this, are concentrating on themes of change within the organisation. And I think the way that you've done it this time round is really highlighting increasingly changes and themes. So shall I pass over to you?
Thank you, Chair. So with a slightly different style to Q1, Q2 agency, we're starting to bring in some more graphs just to make it sort of, we're just trying to get across the story as succinctly as we can with regards to what we're doing. With regard to the spend, you will notice through Q1 and Q2, there is a downward trend with obviously costs on agency. I say trend because obviously whilst the team is still driving forward the use of less agency, that is always the way that we will look to move. There sometimes will be the need and we will need to, so for statutory services, etc., you will have to bring in temporary resource if we have sickness, etc. But as I say, at the moment, we're still moving towards that downward trend, and you can see that in the table on page 9. just to sort of highlight the wording on page 9, right at the bottom of page 9 to 10. I think there's a few words missing, so apologies. I've just reread that, and it's just a bit sort of doesn't make massive sense. So just to be really clear, there is now a mandate in place where we go through matrix, and we are making sure that there is no off-framework placements permitted. So and to be fair, all management teams are working to that same mandate, and so I think this is helping us with regard to making sure that we're keeping control on our spend around that, and also it's not meaning we're not getting good resource and excellent resource in place, because again, it's got to be, there's still got to be the quality that we're receiving as well. So whilst we look at quantitative information, it is also about the quality of the service that we're also supplying. So that will always be of importance. As we go into page 10, as I said, there's more graphs now. We're just trying to highlight what's going on around the spend and just give a bit more information and breakdown. And as I say, we still then move into breaking it down by directorate with the types of places that we're using agency. Sorry, there's one other point that I should have just raised, was then the number of agency headcount that again we've reported on the top of page 11. And again, speaking to the chair, we're going to make sure that we try and again show that picture with regard to what's happening around numbers and headcount for agency. I don't know if anyone has any specific questions. There are, as I say, obviously the methodologies with regard to agency that continue. We will always look to tackle difficult to recruit posts, and again we sort of pick that up in the report as well. But that's the report that's before you. I don't know if anyone has any further questions regarding this item.
I think Pauline does.
Yeah, just one small question. Is that headcount, or is it MPE or HCE or whatever? I was thinking you could have part-time workers, which could make the headcount look higher than the actual amount of effort done by agency workers.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it is actually headcount, which obviously could make it look higher. So I will just double check that, because as I say, we work to actually full-time equivalent, as you say, post. So I will just sort of make sure that that's not giving an unfair information around that.
Thank you.
Yes, I think that's a very good point. I think if we had FTE, that would enable us to track the number of people in the organisation in a more comparable way from one quarter to another. Stephen.
Thanks very much, and thank you for the report, Louise. I think this obviously on the headline figures, the amount of spend's going down, which is the direction of travel we hope to see. But I think I just wanted to highlight the importance of some of the points you made in qualification for all this, which is first and foremost, there are always going to be occasions where we need agency staff, and we should recognise that and acknowledge that. There are a variety of circumstances that are going to lead to the need for agency staff. So we shouldn't get too fixated on numbers or costs. We want to control costs, and we'd like to see a lessening of reliance on agency staff, but we will always have a need for agency staff. And the other point I wanted to highlight that you mentioned, Louise, again, was the importance of the quality of the service we're providing. And sometimes that quality can only be secured by bringing in agency staff to help us on specific tasks. So again, we just shouldn't get too obsessed with the figures. We should recognise that there's a qualitative element here that the figures will never capture.
Louise.
Stephen might have just answered my question, but is there a target that you're looking to, or in terms of overall numbers of staff or spend?
I suppose the only target I've got is principles of driving down the use of agency where we can. I don't really have a target from the point of view, I've not been set a target. Obviously, value for money will always be of high importance, but it's also about making sure that we're able to supply our service, and especially statutory services for our residents. But we have sign-off processes for all of these, so it's not something that just HR signs off. This is signed off by the directors and goes through a process. So it's something that is also shared monthly, quarterly with those directors and managers, so that again that they're aware.
One question.
Oh, sorry. If you want to continue with your question, Lou, and then I was wondering if I could interject with a point, and I do realise that we've now got Stephen, Pauline and Yusra are all waiting.
I don't know if it is or isn't. No, actually, never mind. No.
Fantastic. So I was really just going to agree with Louise there, that we don't have a target as such beyond the broad targets that Louise has talked about. We don't have a numerical target, for example. A rise in agency staff could actually be very good news for the council. It could mean that we've won a lot of grant funding, that we're doing some special projects, and the best way to deliver those projects is through using agency and contract staff to temporarily boost the workforce. I mean, we will always consider fixed term employees before we go to agency and contract staff, but there are times that actually they are the best and on occasion the cheapest way of getting the staff in, as well as, you know, what Lou was saying about there are times that we need to use agency staff to, for example, ensure that we're meeting the statutory demands on the council. And I'm hoping that as this report continues to develop, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be adding in the narrative so that becomes clear. So if there is a rise in agency staff, we will then be focusing our attention on, is that good news for the council? Because, for example, we need these people in order to deliver services for our residents because we've got some grant funding, or is it actually something that we need to scrutinise because it might be a piece of bad news? I think the chart that to me speaks loudest is on page 10, and it's that quarterly agency spend. So if you kind of count along 1, 2, 3, 4 quarters to quarter 4, 23 to 24, that's when the mandate went out across the council that all parts of the council had to follow the framework when recruiting agency staff, and you see a sharp decline in costs for the first quarter, followed by a further, not quite as sharp, but a further decline in costs in the second quarter. And I think that to me is a really powerful statistic. Now, in order to actually saw people's hands go up, I had Stephen and then Pauline and then Yusra. Is that fair?
I think, of course, I think it's utterly fair. Yes. But thank you very much. What I wanted to say was really, we do need to, as you're suggesting, I think, Rachel, differentiate between different kinds of agency staff. Clearly, there are agency staff which we take on because of temporary projects. We've been successful in getting a grant to deliver a project, to deliver a new scheme. It clearly would not be sensible to take on permanent staff in that instance. It's entirely sensible to take on agency staff, which are time limited. There are other cases where clearly a move away from agency staff and the employment of permanent council staff is infinitely preferable. And an obvious example would be social care, where we want to reduce reliance on agency staff and employ more of our own staff. But it is worth pointing out, because there are some people who get a little bit obsessed with headcount amongst permanent staff, that if you reduce your dependence on agency staff in areas like that, there will be an increase in headcount amongst permanent staff. Now that, I would say, was a really positive, because we're investing in the organisation in ways that will generate savings in the future. So I think we just need to be quite nuanced and subtle about the way we consider headcount, because we can end up cutting our nose to spite our face if we're not careful.
I completely agree, and I think we need to be kind of nuanced and balanced and look at the full scenario when we're making comments on the number of staff. So thank you very much. I think I have Pauline next.
Yeah, just to say, yeah, I completely agree as well. And it's interesting you pointed out that change in the graph. That's about £500,000. It's not insignificant. It's a feral slug of the budget. So I think visibility is the important thing. Agency staff are not always bad. Agency staff are not always good. Permanent staff are not always bad. Permanent staff are not always good. What we want to find is inefficiency when we're paying too much, or when we're paying an agency person plus a permanent employee to do the same job. That's what we need to track. So I think it's really well done, this. What I wanted, the reason I put my hand up wasn't to say that, it was to actually ask whether interims were in here as well.
If interims have been taken on through an agency, then yes, they will be. So this is anything that is not part of what they're not part of our actual workforce as such, so they won't be counted in those head counts. I mean, some of our interims will be on fixed terms, so will be salary based and according to our grades. Sometimes we will take on interims whereby we are paying a day rate. So the ones that if we are paying for a day rate, they will be included within this. Did that answer your question, Pauline?
Sort of. So
okay.
I think you're fundamentally saying yes, they are in here.
They are.
Unless
I think the answer is yes. The only caveat I give is that obviously, again, we sometimes call a role an interim because they haven't gone through like a permanent recruitment
fixed
process.
Term contract.
Yeah.
Fixed term employment contracts are not in here.
Yeah, exactly right.
Right. Okay, that makes sense. Thank you. That's good.
Thank you very much. And Yusra, you're next.
Thank you. Yes, I agree with Stephen and Pauline. Yes, so it's perfect. Yeah, going on well. But the only thing is, I just want to have a comment. Yeah, what about this agency headcount? Could you please tell those 83 agency workers at the end of Q2 which department they will be in? Where is the because obviously there is a need, so which department they will be in, and overall, is it the number for overall WBC or any relevance to certain department, that 83 number? So we could see, okay, so this department has number of employees, how many employees here? So that 83 number, yeah. So if you could please elaborate, yeah. Is it overall in WBC?
It's that. So the 83 is for everybody. And I can in the future break that down. So I can, I can. You can see which directorates.
That number.
Yeah. So I can let you know which directorates those that headcount is working within. That's not a problem, because that is an overall figure.
Just out of curiosity, how many staff do we have?
Well, I was just about to say, Pauline, it is worth saying that our dependence on agency workers has lessened in an area of the council where we traditionally relied on them heavily because it was difficult to recruit permanent staff, and that's social workers. Now, we are actually have been very successful recently in recruiting permanent staff, which means in that particular area of the council, which was historically heavily reliant on agency workers, we're reliant much less. So it'd be interesting to see what the distribution is now. I suspect it's quite different from in the past.
Can I make a comment? And that is, I referenced this when we started this discussion, but we used to produce some very detailed statistics about agency workers and contractors. And because of that, we had to have that discussion in part 2 of the meeting, so it wasn't public. For that reason, I made the suggestion that we take out all of the information which could identify people potentially, particularly when we're looking at costs, and produce a report which could be discussed as part one. So I think what you're saying, Yusra, is a really good idea. Let's have a look at the breakdown by directorate. There are some areas of the council who, because of the very nature of their work, will tend to need more contractors and agency workers in other areas of the council. But I thought it's just worth adding in that we will need over time to make sure that the statistics that we're producing don't pull us back into this having to be a confidential discussion.
And it will create surely more transparency as well, more clarity. So you could see the numbers.
It won't be transparent if it's in part two though, so.
That's exactly right. That's a really good way of putting it. I want to make sure that we have as much information as possible, as transparent as possible, without having a conversation which is so confidential that it can't be held in a public forum. And Prue, you have been very patient waiting.
So it's sort of stole my thunder, but not quite. These figures are for quarter one and quarter two. At the end of quarter two, so in September, we finished a load of recruitment in children's services, particularly for people working with care leavers. So we've now got a permanent team in there instead of a load of agency workers. So next time we should see an improvement in that. And we did that in time for Ofsted to visit last week, which was very handy. We're doing a focus visit on that service. And it was good to see the staff being so enthusiastic, and they've bedded in really well. So Children's Services is managing to recruit those people, social workers and PAs, and it's really good to see. We've changed our offer to them, and it's made a big difference in being able to recruit them.
Can I just say thank you, but also that's the drive. The drive is to really hone in on those difficult to recruit or historically difficult to recruit jobs, and there always will be some. Because of just the historical nature of them, and there's a lack within the actual marketplace. But by reviewing and thinking about what it is we're offering, we can be successful. And this is that link back to recruitment, and then back to, as you say, our FTE and our headcount, because now, as you say, motivation also goes up because you've now got a team that are working with real purpose to make a difference. And I think SEND as well, we've had some real success as well, and you'll start to see that coming through.
They haven't
in
quite
quarter three.
started yet.
I know they're not quite in place, but we're getting there.
Can I have one sort of follow-up, which is not connected with that? Sorry, Louis, I'm waiting still. That last time we did the people strategy, and we have the 4 things let's see if I can do it. We care, we share, we learn, and we belong. Yes, right. I can remember that. Very good. So it might be good when we produce reports here to say which strand of the strategy. So I think this is we learn. Is it? Yes.
You're absolutely right, and I have instructed the team to make sure that every time we now bring any item on people, workforce, etc., it will absolutely be associated with one of the commitments of our people strategy, because that then links to our delivery plan, which will also then come in here to be reviewed. But yes, you're absolutely right, and yeah, we didn't quite get that into these ones, so we need to get into that habit.
Lou.
Sorry, just a quick comment about if you're going to report the number of FTEs per directorate or agency FTEs per directorate, that only really makes sense if it's in the context of something. So either are we looking at it over time, or are we looking at it as a proportion of the overall FTEs? Otherwise it is a little bit meaningless.
So again, I believe our reports do give us this information. It's just what we've extrapolated on this particular occasion. So whenever we build something, I'll make sure that we'll put it in from quarter one through to the quarter we're then reporting on, and then keep that information building over a period of time. I haven't got my expert here, Sally Halliwell, who's actually on leave today, who's the person that actually has pulled this together. So hopefully I'm not making promises I can't deliver, because I do not like doing that. But from my understanding of seeing the reports, that shouldn't be an issue, and we should be able to also give comparators for these 3 quarters.
Yeah, we always want narrative, don't we? So that any figures that we're producing can be understood in context.
Yeah.
So I just had one more comment myself, which is I think that the the important picture to look at here is the long-term picture, because month to month you're always going to get noise. So you can, you know, if you look at the monthly agency headcount figures and the monthly agency spend figures, you can see that there are rises and falls as pieces of work go through the council, as recruitment, recruitment projects are delivered. The important thing to look at here, I think, will be over the long term. And I think that agency spend on page 10, which shows you what it looks like over the long term. That's probably the bird's eye view that we need on our figures. So I think I would be happy if there's no further comments to move this to the recommendation.
Sorry,
Pauline,
sorry.
I beg your pardon.
It's all right. Apologies. The Yusra and Lou just prompted something in my mind. I think, again, it would be useful to know how many permanent employees this relates to, not just the time. Because obviously, if you've got, 10 interims or 10 agency workers in a department of 15, it's a different matter from if you've got 10 in a department of 600 or whatever. So I think that the number of of permanent employees would be helpful, or at least fixed term employees and permanent employees.
And I think we did have a discussion today, didn't we, about reporting on employee numbers. So I think if we could add, Pauline, your comment, which I think is a very valid comment to that discussion, Lou.
Yeah, I can confirm, because I think there were questions that have been asked from the Overview and Scrutiny Committee. So we're providing some information into Overview and Scrutiny tomorrow, and I think from that we've decided that we should be bringing that into Personnel Board and making that reference point, so that again we're looking at obviously all of the information, so that again you can see that at one point. So yes, I've written that as a note, Chair, and we'll make sure that going forward, we'll work on that and we'll bring that into then our reporting. And I'm also working up with you, and I haven't quite shared with you, but a forward plan as well that we can share into the committee as well. So again, we can see when that information is coming in, all linked back to our people strategy.
Brilliant. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So the recommendation is that the Personnel Board notes the information contained within the report. So that's proposed by Stephen and seconded by Yusra. Oh, that was a hand going up. Yeah.
He's great.
Yeah, just at the end of the report of this, there is the last very first line of the last paragraph, which says additional and transformation funding IHAS. It's which I searched it up and I find it very interesting. There is a European company which is it's in the page 11. Which paragraph? Last para of first line. Additional transformation funding. I think it's 12, page 12. Page 12, sorry.
Sorry, which paragraph?
It's last paragraph of adult service under this analysis by Directorate, Adult Social Care and Health. It's typo, yes. It's the typo, yeah, because yes, so it's there, yeah, no worries, yeah.
Yeah, I've noticed that it's a typing mistake, so apologies for that. Yeah.
No worries. But interestingly, there is a European organization which is IHAS, yeah, and obviously, yeah, that doesn't make any sense, yeah. So it's definitely typo, yeah.
But thank you very much. So taking that into account, I think I had a proposer from Stephen, a seconder from Prue. All those in favour? Super. That's everybody. Thank you. Thank you very much. So the next item is item number 37, which is the special leave policy. I think this is an absolutely fantastic piece of work. It covers a number of bases. It pulls together a number of existing policies which existed in a number of different separate policies, and it amalgamates them. It also updates those both with new policies that we've brought in, so the volunteer leave, for example, and with some of the situations which are more likely to occur in modern life. So, for example, leave for IVF. It generally updates it. You've done a lot of benchmarking, your team, Louise, to see what other councils are doing. And I think this is an absolutely fantastic piece of work. Just to mention that this is being brought to us, it's not at the final stage. It hasn't been through that 3 C's process where we make sure that it's clear communication. This is for us to make substantive comments on. I did have a conversation earlier with Louise about one particular word in the policy, but by and large, our conversation tonight should be about substantive points in the policy. And I can see that Stephen's already got a question before I hand over to Louise to introduce it.
It's not a question, it's a comment, which doesn't count in the 3 C's, I think. But what I wanted to say about this was, I am going to be alliterative. What I really liked about it is it combines compassion and clarity, because we've got the compassion with a recognition of sets of circumstances that legitimise the need for very special arrangements about leave, but we also have clarity to a much greater extent than we've had before. And I think those two mark this out as an extremely helpful way forward. So I'm very supportive of this. I didn't see anything that I had any particular concerns about.
Stephen, thank you very much. And Prue.
Another C that you want to add to it, consistency. So the different parts of the council will be treating everybody fairly in the same way, with fewer. I mean, obviously every situation will be different and whatever, but the guidance will be applied across the council in the same way, and that can only help. Particularly, as I said earlier on, we've been Ofsteded last week, and consistency is the one that Ofsted, it's drilled in my head now. But I think it is important, and it brings everything together in one place and as Stephen said, makes it much clearer. And yes, I'm very supportive of this.
That's brilliant. Thank you very much, Prue. Paulie, you've got your hand up.
Yep, I agree. I think it's good policy. Are you going to log centrally somewhere the application numbers and approved days and such like, so that we can actually, again, not we necessarily, but the management of the council can get a view on whether there's any anomalies and whether it's unusually, even here you've got some management discretion, which is fine, just to make sure the management discretion is being used in a consistent way.
Absolutely, yes. Because as I say, at the heart of this, it hit the nail on the head. It's consistency, and making sure then that we come across as a fair organisation, because we're applying that set of principles to everyone. But yes, there's a form which is electronic, which will be filled out, and that will enable us to be able to monitor how this policy is being used, and as I say, so again, it will be the data against the qualitative information that we'll also be receiving. So yeah, so the answer to your question very simply is yes, and obviously we will make sure that that's something that's fed into our management team.
Thank you.
You asked for a substantive point. I have a substantive point. So it's on page 28, and it's about the different way that retained firefighters, special constables and service in non-regular forces are being treated. I mean that the non-regular forces are getting 2 weeks paid leave per annum for attendance at annual camp. But if you're a special constable or retained firefighter, you get nothing extra. And that doesn't seem quite right to me. I don't want, obviously you can't say to somebody you're a special constable, you can have all the time off you like to be a special constable, or retained firefighter, but I do think they do have to do training and such like. And I think that if we're going to allow people in non-regular forces to have time off to do an annual camp, then perhaps we ought to allow 2 or 3 days training a year for special constables and retained firefighters. Yep.
Can I take? I can definitely point away and have a look at it. That's partly why we bring it into this meeting, because it's just getting that independent sort of viewpoint of what we've sort of set out. So yeah, I'm very happy to have a look. I think we have benchmarked, but it doesn't make it okay. But let me just make sure I provide that information back, just to sort of I think just give you a little bit more background to perhaps why we've put that in. As I say, you're right, it does. And I think that comes from, I think the difference is because that becomes under the provision of the Green Book, which is the national terms and conditions, whereas the firefighters and the retained firefighters and special constables, there isn't anything special within the Green Book. So it doesn't mean that that's what we should follow, but so I would definitely take it back and we'll just have that conversation.
It may be because retained firefighters and special constables are noted down here as being additional employment, which servicing non-regular forces isn't given. I don't know if that's a difference, but yes, it would be good to get the answer to that. And Steve
I was about to say that I think there is a distinction between them, because the non-regular armed forces are what used to be called territorial army. These are people who will get drafted into active service. So their lives are on the line. So the training they receive is utterly vital in that sense. And it may be that therefore they're covered under national policy, whereas the other categories of people we're talking about are not.
You can't really argue that a retained firefighter doesn't risk their life, which they do. So I'm not trying to suggest that one is more superior to the other, but and I'm not trying. I understand the difference between those two kinds of things, but I do think the country needs special constables and it needs retained firefighters, and so we should be perhaps supporting that public service endeavour a little bit.
I think
Not
those are
2
really
weeks worth, but
let's
probably
take
days.
those away and
I'll write back to
April,
I'll
get
write back to
answers.
the committee just to let
Yeah.
you know if there's a specific reason, and then also just have a look at the benchmarking, and then if consideration, if you'd like us to build that in a similar way for firefighters and constables, we can again just sort of give you a little bit more information around numbers of people perhaps that are taking that on or not at the moment as well. So yeah, I'll take that away and just give you a bit more information.
That's great. I had one thought, and that is there's a lot of really valuable information in here. For the benefit of line managers in particular who are trying to find the guidance on a particular issue quickly, I'm wondering if we could have some kind of a summary up front to give the absolute main points of the policy, and also what you can find within the policy. I think that might be quite useful.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what we'll do is the table we've put at the back, just to help summarise our changes, we'll change that into sort of like the summary of the document, and maybe, and I'd say probably put it up front, so you can then sort of very quickly see what it is that you're looking for, and perhaps add links in to then it takes people to that specific place. But just for your reference, on page 31 you can just see that table of changes, and the main thing I really wanted to get across, which has already been said, is it is about consistency. We've also benchmarked, and in some places we have had there's no guidance whatsoever. So we have brought in some guidance around different duties, and you'll notice the sort of 1 to 5 day has become quite the norm all the way through the process. Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to sort of go on about lots, because I think you've had the opportunity, if you have any specific questions, and as I say, the leave is all listed on that back page, but by the sounds of things, I don't think there's question mark around perhaps what we're doing. In fact, this has sort of become a policy which it does make it so much easier for people if they've just got one place where they can go and find what the guidance is around it. So
Yeah, fantastic. I think Pauline's got a question. Pauline, have you got your hand up?
Yeah, thank you. I was just intrigued by the time off for public duties section 14 on page 26. I was interested in people who are official members of a local authority. How is that likely in a council work? I know that not all posts are restricted, but I thought they were meant to be non-political generally. So I'd like a bit more flesh on that. And the other question was, obviously there's local authorities and local authorities. Speaking from experience, it's a lot more onerous to be a member of a unitary or I presume a county than it is to be a parish councillor, and yet you're not differentiating in terms of the number of days. And I just wondered if that was intentional. I'm not criticising it, I'm just curious.
It definitely isn't intentional not to differentiate. Again, I think we have lifted this from Green Book, so we have sort of taken the specifics from Green Book. There's nothing to stop someone actually being a member or being a councillor at a local authority. You're right in the fact that they do need to advise us, and there needs to be obviously sort of written acceptance of that, and obviously if jobs change, etc., we need to keep that under review with regard to what's required, and that is one of the areas where we didn't really have any type of cap on the amount of time. Now we have put in a suggestion of the 15 days per annum, because looking at benchmarking with information, we are quite out of kilter with that. But so answering your question, yes, they can. I haven't differentiated between the different types of council, but I can just go back and recheck that to make sure we haven't omitted something that we should have put in there. I hope that's answered your question.
Yeah, I mean, I don't. So the question about whether people are able to be members of a local authority or not is an interesting one, bearing in mind the fact they're meant to be politically neutral. But you know, that's an aside. I think the 15 days is probably reasonable for a major a principal authority, but I don't think it's reasonable for a town council. I think most parish and town councils should be done with the goodness of your heart, and maybe a day or two, not 15. But that's my point, my view.
Thank you very much, Stephen.
I think this will become a great deal simpler if the government carry through on what they promised today, which is the abolition of all district councils and county councils, and only one tier of local government, which is unitary councils. So I should be careful you don't adopt a form of words that rapidly becomes redundant. I'm not sure that anyone would, under this categorisation of local authority, think of parish or town councils as coming into this. They're all essentially volunteers, and it would be invidious really if we gave time off as a result of them falling under this rubric of a local authority when other employers may not. So I think we just need to be careful on that one. But local authority looks as though it's going to be a rather more simplified concept in the future.
Right.
Just looking at that list, does a police authority actually exist anymore? It's called something else now, isn't it?
It's called
Police and
Crime Commissioners.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure that it's probably an old list that hasn't got updated from in the Green Book. Yes.
Yeah, but I'll
So
make
it's only
sure.
10 years since it disappeared. So,
Yeah.
That's a very good point.
Yeah.
Super. Do we have any other questions, points, suggestions? No. Okay, so in that case, are we happy to move to the recommendation that the Personnel Board comment on and agree the comments to the policy? Is that a comment or is that a proposal? Yeah.
That's a proposal, but we do indeed move to that.
Proposed by Stephen, seconded by Prue. All those in favour? And that's unanimous. Thank you very much. And can you give your thanks, Louise, to Sally Halliwell and her team who've done a lot of good work putting this together, and thank you very much to yourself as well.
Yeah.
Do tell her we've embedded a new 3 Cs.
Yeah, absolutely.
Compassionate,
Yeah.
clear and
Consistent.
consistent.
Consistent. Yes, absolutely.
Super. So there are no other items for discussion. So thank you very much, and have a happy Christmas.
Thank you.